Hello, Star Wars fans. Hey, there are 345 days until Christmas 2021. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the theory that there are already two timelines in the Star Wars universe created by the last season of Rebels when Ezra goes into the world between worlds. So we'll get talking about that in just a second. A couple of things up front is tomorrow we'll be continuing our Thursday talks with Imagic Maker from Reimagining Star Wars. And it looks like we're going to jump into a little bit of the father and the son and the daughter. So we'll jump into that tomorrow with Reimagining Star Wars. And then Friday, I've got a huge toy unboxing. And just as a little preview, I'm not going to tell you guys who it is, but it's right in here. And there is, if you know the answer, don't spoil it for anybody. I'll give you a couple of clues. There is an ice cream maker in here, as well as an interchangeable head, so it can have two different looks. So there's your clues, and I'll be doing that unboxing Friday. I'm super excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. So today I've got a guest with us. We've got Wandering Dog from Nerdvana joining us. And
how's it going?
Good morning. Thank you. Or I guess afternoon. It depends where you live. And another note, Gray has been texting me this morning. She has had a power outage since midnight, and they're waiting on her power to get back on. So Gray will probably not be with us in the chat today. She may jump in, but hopefully they'll get her power on. And Wandering Dog, you guys have been going through the Rona, right?
Yeah, dude. Me and my entire family actually are tested positive right now. So, just hanging in there, symptomless, but, I guess we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Everybody doing okay, though?
Hey, Santa, give me like 2 seconds, man. There's something making a lot of noise right outside this room. I just need to shut this other door real fast.
No problem. No problem. So, hey, while he goes and does that, let me just say hello to everybody. Lord Vito, welcome. I won't give you the same amount of grief that Josh does this morning. I had the same concerns as you did with the Lord of the Rings series. I hope that it doesn't go too far down the path of a hard, mature rating. And the concern there certainly comes from that casting of the one director, I guess. And so hopefully it doesn't go down that path. Jonathan, welcome again. Good to have you here. Park Outdoors. You said you had to step away, so maybe you'll be back. And this two timeline theory does have some evidence to back it up. But we're going to talk about that today. And there's a good video. I put it in the comments here. It's from Lore Star. And I mentioned it yesterday. The thumbnail for that is a little bit clickbaity. Tends to make you believe that he's going to kind of be out there on the edge. But the guy is really, really well reasoned. And he does a great job of explaining how this theory may be already in effect for Star Wars. So we're going to go into that kind of in some detail. If you haven't seen that Lore Star video, you may want to just pause here and then catch back up because it's a really, really good background. We'll talk about it some here as well. Yeah. Let's see. Who else? XR Coon. Hey. Let's see. Just make sure I get through everybody who's here. You guys are great. Yeah. All right. So I'm caught up with the comments, and so let's jump into this theory just a little bit here. Let me go this way, and the two timelines theory. Oh, also, if you haven't already, I put the link into the Nerdvana YouTube channel. Plop over there and check his YouTube channel out. This is the very first live stream for you. And so there'll be many more to come, I'm sure. We look forward to those. And also, there's a Discord group, but I cannot put the link to the Discord group in the chat. It has sharing turned off for members. But if you would like to,
I'll get it. Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to post that in there, I'll let it go in. I'll look for it and see if I can improve it. Vito. Okay. Oh, Xavier, welcome. Good to have you here. Thanks so much. And we haven't really gotten going yet, so you're just fine. So essentially what the very basic of the theory is that when Ezra stepped into the portal, so the actual event that in question here happened in season 2 of Rebels, and in that season, Ahsoka meets Vader, and she and he are there when the facility blows up, right? And the assumption is that she's dead. So that's timeline 1. It comes from season 2 of Rebels, where Ahsoka dies in that blast in her confrontation with Vader. Season 4, Ezra revisits that event, and he steps in the world between worlds just before, pulls Ahsoka out, and Ahsoka lives. So we have then the possibility of 2 timelines starting at the end of season 2 of Rebels. So everything prior to that would be as we know it. Starting with season 3, moving forward, there could be a split. And so the question is, and Mark Hamilton, welcome. We've got a big toy reveal coming Friday, and we'll talk about that again later. But has it ever definitively been said that Ahsoka died at the end of season 2? I don't. So here's the thing with Star Wars: unless you see the body and they burn it on the pyre, then maybe they're dead, maybe they're not, right? Because we saw Maul chopped in half, and he lived. We saw, and then of course there's always the question with Mace Windu, right? So
Boba Fett gets eaten by a massive, forever living creature.
Yeah, Boba Fett is eaten in the Sarlacc pit, and he gets out. So there are lots of cases where there's an apparent death, but then maybe not. So no, I don't think that we know definitively that Ahsoka died. The presumption is that she died, and that's what we're just going to chase that theory down a little bit. And we have differing opinions. That's why I'm so happy to have Wandering Dog here with me today. Everyday Geeks, welcome. Good to have you here. Yeah, Park Outdoor says, not really. We don't know until, right. So that's it. So let's talk about the 2 timeline theory. The first is the mainline canon as we know it from season 4 of Rebels, when Ezra pulls Ahsoka out. That would be what we know as canon. And then so the Rebels season 3, season 4 are in canon, right? And then after Rebels season 4, then the original trilogy. What is your thought? Is the original trilogy in canon or out?
All right, so I guess just to start off where I kind of think on this, I think determining anything as canon, mainline canon, not canon, anything, all that kind of has to go out the window almost to even have this conversation, because obviously all of these things happen within the mainline canon. So it's kind of, to me, it's more an assumption to think this than anything, because I mean, when you look at what's happened so far, there's just a lot of evidence that kind of points to the fact that they may be kind of moving in this direction. I don't necessarily think they're trying to retcon anything per se. So as far as the original trilogy goes, I don't think that you can touch that.
I agree.
I think that being the first instance of Star Wars that was created, I think the key to all this, in my opinion, is following the real life chronology instead of the in-universe chronology. So if you look at, all of the things that were released prior to Disney's takeover, I think none of those things would change at all. actually.
Yeah, then the question is, in the original trilogy, you can't change it. It is what it is.
Right.
The question is Ahsoka alive or is she dead?
So I think in the original trilogy that we got, that is the portion of time where she could be either, actually. I think the reason we don't see her in the Ahsoka Lives timeline is because she's outside of what we consider the main part of the galaxy in the unknown regions or searching for Thrawn. And then in the Ahsoka Dies timeline, the reason we wouldn't get her, obviously, is because she's no longer alive. So I think looking at the timeline, I think obviously, like I said, the original trilogy is going to happen one way or the other, meaning the prequel trilogy happened one way or the other. Clone Wars happened. Yeah. So you get a lot of Ahsoka's storyline and her buildup in Clone Wars instead of in Rebels. And I think kind of something that for me made this make a lot of sense was what was in Mandalorian. So it's like when you look at season 2, episode 5, when Ahsoka shows up in live action finally, I think they've kind of intentionally tied back to Clone Wars instead of to Rebels.
Yeah, we'll get there in just a second. And I think I agree with you. In there, so anything prior to season 2 of Rebels is irrelevant, right? Doesn't matter what you believe, right. Because that happened before the split would have happened. The split would not have happened at all until season 4, right? Which then goes back to season 2, and what creates a divergent timeline starting at the end of season 2. So season 3 forward within the timeline in universe timeline is really the only things that are potentially impacted by the split. And the original trilogy fits in both timelines. I don't think there's any evidence contradicting or supporting, at least at this point, Ahsoka Lives or Ahsoka Dies. Because in the Ahsoka novelization, I don't remember, it's been a long time since I read it. I don't remember anything in that novelization that makes it evidence one way or the other.
Right.
I could be wrong, but I just don't remember it.
And in some ways, even if there was, I mean, I think it would kind of be almost a double standard to think that, the original trilogy could happen with Ahsoka alive or dead, but the novel, the Ahsoka novel, could have happened kind of one way or the other as well. I mean, I guess not really, because, I mean, it takes place after Rebels. Well, I don't know. See, that's where the World Between Worlds kind of messes with the timeline a little bit.
Right. Because that's what I'm saying.
The Ahsoka novel itself, I feel like it takes place prior to the actual ending of Rebels, like the epilogue and season finale of season 5 or season 4. But that being said, if it took place prior to that, then she would be dead, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really the point. So if the Ahsoka novel happens after Rebels and she's alive, then that's but I don't know that the Ahsoka novel crosses over to. So that's definitely the Ahsoka Lives timeline. If right. There are, right, but I don't know that the Ahsoka novel crosses over the original trilogy era at all. So I don't think we can use that novel as any evidence that Ahsoka is alive or dead. And to that point, I don't know of any other of the novels. So Aftermath, Bloodlines, Leia, Princess of Alderaan, any of them that happen in the original trilogy or post-original trilogy era, none of them have, in all the Thrawn novels, there's no mention of Ahsoka across any of those. So whether she's alive or dead during the original trilogy or post-original trilogy is not borne out at least in the discussion to this point, right?
Right.
So, Mark,
To be honest with you, Santa, just looking at what you got right here, like I actually didn't really consider the canon novels that came after Disney with Bloodline, Aftermath, Ahsoka. All that. Like I didn't even actually look at those. I was more honestly looking at just film and TV. So I actually like that you brought that up because I didn't even really think about that.
Yeah, I think that's Mark's point, right? So for the normies, for people that aren't, so sweaty into Star Wars, how would you explain it? And I think the only evidence you can use for the normies are the movies and the Mandalorian. That's really
Right.
for normies the only thing they're familiar with, and many normies are only familiar with the Mandalorian because I know people who are not Star Wars fans who started watching the Mandalorian and got hooked, but they've never followed the movies. They've never some of the movies they've not even seen. So you would have to use evidence in the movies or the Mandalorian
Right.
to prove the case. So that's the point. So we'll talk a little bit about how you might explain it to normies, but that's one. I just wanted to bring that up, and we will get to the Ubisoft Star Wars announcement. That's a pretty big one, so we'll talk about that in just a bit. So and Park, we're going to talk about this next. So there's no evidence in the original trilogy. There's no evidence in the novels either way. You can't.
In some sense of the word, because a lot of people point to the fact that Ahsoka being gone in the original trilogy is evidence, but in reality, like it doesn't matter which timeline you're in. Like we said, she just would not be in the original trilogy. She's just not there.
Right. It's one or the other. Either she's dead or she's just unaccounted for during the timeline. We don't know. Right. The last time we see her is in the mainline canon at the end of, I guess it would be the Ahsoka novel is the last time we see her. And if we
on screen is
and if that's in the Ahsoka Lives timeline, so the Ahsoka novel is in the Ahsoka Lives timeline, but we don't know that there is any evidence disproving the Ahsoka Dies timeline exists
either.
Right? With the Mandalorian, Mr. Nobody, Luke's the first apprentice of Grogu. We'll talk about that too, Mr. Nobody. That's a really good. So in the Mandalorian, you wrote so Wandering Dog. He shared with me a text document that he put together yesterday. You have a pretty good outline supporting your claim that Ahsoka. That there is a two timeline, and the Mandalorian could exist within the Ahsoka Dies timeline, not in the Ahsoka Lives timeline, right?
Right.
So go ahead.
Well, wait. Say that one more time. I'm sorry. I kind of
in your text document that you sent to me, I think you're supporting the Mandalorian exists in the Ahsoka Dies timeline. Is that right?
No. So Mandalorian would actually take. All right. So this is where I feel like it actually will make more sense that there's two timelines. So when I guess the video we were watching yesterday from the Lore Star, kind of generalizing a theory really similar to mine, he was talking about how the Mandalorian even would take place all the way up to the point where season 2, episode 5 happens and Ahsoka tells Mando to go to Tython. So basically saying that the entire series would continue to take place as follows from season 1, episode 1, all the way till season 2, episode 5, in which case Mando would never meet Ahsoka because she's dead. And the rest of the plan is history. So like in the Ahsoka timeline, Mando doesn't meet Ahsoka, but Moff Gideon catches up to him, captures Grogu, and Grogu never sees the Seeing Stone, so Luke never finds out, never shows up to save him. So Palpatine gets Grogu, turns his blood into Snoke or clones him, whatever they do to him, and then you get the sequel trilogy. So that's kind of my theory on that one.
Yeah, that's the evidence, right? The evidence is if Ahsoka were, which is it? If Ahsoka was alive, then you wouldn't have you would or wouldn't have the sequel trilogy.
If Ahsoka's alive, you will not have the sequel trilogy.
Right. And the reason for that is
because Grogu was captured instead of going to Tython and being placed on the Seeing Stone.
Okay, I see. So so with the existence of Grogu and what they're doing with him, that supports that they're using his M count. Right, they're using his M count to create Snoke.
Right.
And if Ahsoka is alive, then you wouldn't. The Empire doesn't get him.
Correct. So I think Snoke may never happen in the Ahsoka Lives timeline.
I got it. So that's the theory, and the Mandalorian is what gives us the first evidence, if you want to put it that way, that there could be two timelines. Prior to that, you can't rule in or out one or the other.
Correct.
And so it's this is why I personally think that this is a fan interpretation of the events, similar to the Darth Jar Jar theory. So there are people who absolutely love the Darth Jar Jar theory, and they've made up really strong arguments for it and why it is a thing, and they'll argue it with you. I think it's silly, but I think it's fun, and it does no harm to the fandom whatsoever to have that discussion about Darth Jar Jar.
Right.
Another fun one is to talk about Luke is dead during the entire sequel trilogy. That's a fun one. Now there's holes in it, but it's another fun argument to
I
have.
actually like that along with this theory.
Yeah, I think it's fun. And the other part on this is, even though I disagree with it, I think it's a fun discussion to have. So that's why we're doing this. If anybody just is like, hey, Santa, this isn't healthy for the fandom, I disagree, only because the discussion in and of itself is not harmful. If they actually execute it and make it definitive one way or the other, then that makes it more difficult, because the folks who love the sequel trilogy, like myself, who consider it to be mainline canon, would not like to see it decanonized in any way. Right. And in a multiverse, it's not decanonized because both timelines are canon. It's just we don't know about the other one yet. Right. If you and so when you talk about retconning the sequel trilogy, again, I mentioned this over and over again. In Star Wars, they retcon stuff all the time. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means you have a different understanding of it. And a lot of people, when they use retcon now, they mean like it doesn't exist anymore. The sequels wouldn't exist. No, that's not true. They'll change the context so that you see it in a different light, whether that's in a parallel timeline and both timelines are canon, or if it's given some more context so that you understand maybe Luke is dead, or maybe, all these different theories. I think it's actually a lot of good. And so we have like Reefer Man, right? Discussing possibilities, fine, and it's good for the fandom. And like Imagic Maker, he runs a reimagining Star Wars where
I'm actually in his Discord.
That's great.
Yeah, Imagic Maker, if you're here, by the way.
Yeah, if he's here, speak up. But they work on fan fiction, and some fan fiction is very good, very, very good, and it doesn't break canon at all. And it helps bring people in and helps give context to things so that you can enjoy Star Wars more, I'm all for it. And like Mark Hamilton says, Darth Jar Jar was brilliant and fun, right? Somebody got really creative to come up with the theory, and then
didn't Lucas say that the theory was actually it was correct, wasn't it? That was his initial plan, right?
He said that Jar Jar was actually key to the prequel series. And then it backed off, and so people went back and said, well, if he's key, how is he key? Because it doesn't make any sense. But I think Lucas, in context, was talking about the technology to make it work, where you could CGI a character,
right,
and be a primary character in the movies. I think he's talking more about the technology side. But if you talk about the story side itself, the Darth Jar Jar theory supports that statement, right?
Yeah.
So let's see who else. Oh, Hawks Holocron, hello. Oh, welcome. Let's see there. So Mr. Nobody says there are 3 timelines. Legends. Oh, good point. So let's bring that up there briefly, because I had this discussion yesterday. George Lucas at one point said he saw the EU novels as an alternate universe where they played in the same space. That was something. That's how he viewed the EU. Now Lucasfilm came out and they gave these tiers of canon thing that kind of confused folks now, but Lucas always saw it as an alternate timeline or an alternate universe, actually, which could support. Yeah, which could support what Mr. Nobody's saying here, right? Like the Legends stuff is an alternate universe, maybe not an alternate timeline, if you take Lucas's words, but it could fit into a different timeline. But you'd have to explain, how those splits all come out. But Mandalorian and the sequel trilogy both can be supported through this theory, I think. Let's see what else. Hey, Dale, you're back. Good to hear. So let's see.
I think Mr. Nobody kind of hit on the topic that I was talking about, though.
Yeah. So, meaning what?
So like in this, in the write-up we were looking at yesterday or whatever, he's talking about how there's a Mandalorian timeline, an expanded universe timeline, and then a sequel trilogy timeline. And I kind of almost feel like, I guess it kind of reverts back to that initial question where they were asking how they would explain it to the normies. I kind of don't necessarily feel like they're going to have to. I think it's going to be kind of like in some weird retrospect made obvious. So you remember, I think it was season 2, episode 3, maybe it was episode 3 where they show the Snoke clones in the tank.
Yeah.
In Mandalorian.
Yeah. I think it's episode 3, the escape.
Yeah. So when they're showing that, I kind of feel like that was the obvious, like, oh, hey, look right here, guys. This is what they're trying to do with Baby Yoda. Right? So, like, if they never take possession of him again, like if Luke has him, as long as, Kylo doesn't show up and take Grogu or Snoke or, however you want to look at that.
Right.
As long as that doesn't happen, I mean, wouldn't it be like a really subtle in-universe explanation as to what just happened? Like, because if the Empire never gets him back, they've already stated how they didn't get enough blood to complete what they were trying to complete. So it's like if they now don't get him back anymore after this, then it's like, okay, so did Snoke not happen? Because obviously they were trying these tests and all this stuff, or are they going to find another way to complete their testing or training for Snoke? Yeah, because it kind of feel like once you bring all this stuff in, and then you turn around, maybe in season 3 and introduce Thrawn, it's like now you're in a weird spot because Thrawn's not in the sequel trilogy either.
But we still have another 20 plus years to happen before the sequel trilogy. So
Well, should it be 20 years?
yeah, I think so. There's 30 total, and this is about 10. So
right, yeah. So Mandalorian takes place like what, the first season's like 5 years after Return of the Jedi, I think.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some debate over 5, 6, or 7, but
Right, but it's around that ballpark.
Let's say 5.
In Mandalorian's timeline, Kylo should be how old?
About 5,
Right.
maybe 4, because theoretically, Ben was conceived at the celebrations following Return of the Jedi.
Right.
So that's at least so if he was conceived in the celebrations following, be it the day, a week, or month, whatever. Let's just say a year after Return, Kylo is a infant.
Yeah.
So he'd be about 4 years old.
Okay. So yeah, like I was just trying to figure out where that lined up, because I mean, I guess in some way, I kind of feel like I feel like they're going to kind of do what Endgame did, where they're not necessarily, jumping around, creating a whole bunch of different timelines that have to be explained to fans. I think it's going to be blatantly obvious, like what happened.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be like, oh, okay, so like the reason we're not seeing any more of this guy is because this storyline prevented that one from happening, or whatever the case may be. Like,
yeah, and like I said earlier, I think as long as both timelines are canon, right?
Right. That's what I was kind of saying earlier. I think to contextualize it as mainline canon or not mainline canon would almost be naive, because I think the point of this is to have canon for both groups. To have canon for normies and a canon for hardcore fans that want all this fan service and things like that pushed in.
Yeah, and in a way, I'm okay with that, because the more that you allow people to interpret things, so I see all kinds of weird stuff out there, right? You've got people who think Luke was homosexual, for example. Well, if that's what floats your boat, I'm not going to fight with you. I don't see it that way. But
man, they just thought the sequel trilogy got people riled up.
I mean, there's all kinds of different segments of folks, right? And I'm not gonna fight you with what you like. I disagree. That's it's fine for us to have disagreements. I personally don't think there is a split timeline, right? My own personal opinion. But as long as it's not proven one way or the other, I don't think it hurts for the folks. And I think we had a really good comment here by Mark, right? There's loads of things. He said, don't like the sequel trilogy, just erase it from your headcanon. Or, just prefer the parallel canon timeline, right? If that's what helps you, just erase it in your head. There's loads to love and be excited for in new Disney Plus content. I wholeheartedly, right? It doesn't matter which timeline it's in. If you like it, that's fine. Right.
He kind of touched on something we talked about yesterday in his comment right there with RJ and Filoni both being on the set of The Last Jedi. It's something I wasn't really super aware of prior to asserting that I think that Filoni essentially saw what was happening in the storyline of The Last Jedi, and during the process of that movie being created was the same timeline or time frame when he actually created World Between Worlds. So it almost seemed to me, in terms of timing, that it may have been, that the World Between Worlds may have been implemented as a safety net.
Yeah.
To begin with.
Let's just outline that for folks that may not be 100%, sweaty on it. So, 2017 is when The Last Jedi came out, right?
Yeah. I think,
15,
yeah. So.
Yeah, 15, 17, and 19. So 2015 was The Force Awakens. And 2017 was also the beginning of the last season of Rebels. So in 2017, they were finishing that as far as like the pre-production, artwork, animation, all of that was being finished, and so that by the end of when it started airing, that work would have already been done, or at least
Rebels started airing on October 16th, and The Last Jedi dropped on December 17th.
Right,
so they're about a month and a half apart.
Exactly. So, but what we know is that Rian Johnson was tutoring Dave Filoni on live action film making at the time. And this is something that's come out more recently, even more, is that Ryan said, hey, it was Kathy Kennedy's idea to send him out with Rian Johnson to learn live filmmaking as far as his career progression went, right? Say, oh, are you interested in doing live? He said, well, maybe, but, and she said, well, let's send you out. You can get your feet wet, learn a little bit, and then we'll take it from there. So
you think that training could have been taking place for him to attempt to do the Rebels sequel?
I think so. I think so. They were already thinking about what could Dave do in live action. So, and with him being so deep into lore, right? Him being so deep into the Star Wars universe, that you want to play with live action. Let's get you some experience. And it's very possible, and to what you were talking about yesterday and just mentioned, that during that he saw a potential issue. And so he wrote into season 4, The World Between Worlds. I'm not 100% sure of that, but there, you can't really disprove it
or prove it one way or the other. It's just the timing of it seems so coincidental, because there's like when you really think about it too, like there's a bunch of weird stuff that goes on in Star Wars. For instance, like everyone talks about with sci-fi, how you are kind of allowed that one like non-scientific thing to happen. And that's why Star Wars is a space fantasy, because you got ships that fly around and laser swords and the Force and all these things that are not explainable by science, so it can't classify as sci-fi. Like I feel like in this sense, you kind of look at that and it's like, while Star Wars has all these weird things that can't be explained by science, there's nothing even remotely close to time travel, world between worlds, any of that kind of stuff prior to the ending of Rebels.
Yeah. And I don't know that the World Between Worlds proves that there's a feud going on within Lucasfilm either.
No, I don't think so either. I think it was more just Filoni was like, oh, hey, I don't really like this. Maybe if I'm ever put in charge after I learn how to make film, this would allow me to make some changes to some stuff that I don't like.
It could, or yes, absolutely. No, or yes, absolutely. And I think he likes Rian Johnson. I don't think he had any. I
don't think he has a problem with him as a person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been, being his mentee. And it's kind of what I was talking about yesterday. Was me personally, I think Rian Johnson is actually an excellent filmmaker. I just don't think he's a Star Wars guy.
Yeah, that's
said numerous times on camera that he's not a Star Wars guy. He's a Star Trek guy.
And Rick said as well. Rick, welcome. Good to have you here. I think that there's evidence to say that Rian loved Star Wars. He just had different ideas about where the story was going. He didn't have enough rails on the side to keep him on path. And so he kind of went as far as he could with maintaining the story through line. But and I don't agree that, and this is just me, right? There are different parts of the fandom who have different opinions on Rian and on The Last Jedi. I personally enjoy The Last Jedi a lot. But that's me. And I know that you don't share that. Rick, I'm guessing you don't share that either. And I don't even think Trev does. So that's fine that we have different opinions about it. But I don't think there's a feud going on between Dave Filoni saying, "Oh, Rian Johnson ruined Star Wars." I don't think.
I'm going to try to make you laugh right here for a second. So you're talking about The Last Jedi specifically. I don't really talk about it too much just because it wasn't really my favorite movie or anything like that. I don't really like being like overly negative towards Star Wars in general, because I think it is bad to build negative energy towards something that you love. But you know, aside from all that, like with The Last Jedi, like the way I kind of look at it, man, when I went in the theater and saw it, when I walked out of the theater, I wanted my money back. But that being said, as time has progressed, like I've seen this movie now probably close to 100 times because I turn it on when I, you know, go to sleep at night or whatever. And, you know, as things have moved into the present, I think looking back on that movie, I kind of forget all of the things that I hated about it. And the movie in my mind has more become, you know, just the parts that I liked.
I think that's fair, and I think that's normal part of progression. And Rick, you bring up a point. I have it highlighted here because I want to talk about it in just a moment. But I think when you deal with grieving, any kind of grievance, right?
Right.
When you first start, you go through anger, right? You go through denial. You go through these stages of grief. Over time, as that begins to diminish, then you kind of overlook the parts that are most inflaming. And you could just kind of say, well, I don't like that, versus I hate it with a burning fire. So I think that's exactly what happens. It happened to me with the prequels. And until I go back and rewatch, say, Attack of the Clones, and it makes me mad again. And then, but that level of mad is less, right? So
right.
Especially with the Clone Wars, that I can contextualize around it and say, okay, I just don't like that. But that's all right. But I like this scene, and I like this scene, and I like this, and I like that. I still like Star Wars. I like the opening of Attack of the Clones. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and I like the last few scenes of Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, but there's a lot for me to dislike. And so I think for folks of The Last Jedi, that's exactly what's going on. And I want to touch on Rick's point now, because Ryan, I think, made a big mistake by picking on fans. And this is why we want to have the discussion today. You see, Wandering Dog and I have different opinions about if there is a multiverse or not. I personally don't think there is. I think, you're saying you personally think that there is, right?
I think it's very possible. I don't necessarily know how I feel about it, to be totally honest, because at the same time, I'm with you. Like, I just don't think that there would be necessarily necessary.
But you know, the thing is, as long as you don't say your theory sucks, right? I disagree with your theory, but I don't say your theory sucks. And I think that was Ryan's mistake. When fans are speculating, and that's why I mentioned the Darth Jar Jar, that Luke is dead, the multiple timelines. These are fans who are engaging with the content. Even if you're one of these who I consider way extreme, right? Luke is gay, right?
What's up, Trinity?
I can't disagree with that more, but I'm not going to, blast them. You believe what you want to believe. We're not on the same planet together. That's fine. But I'm not gonna attack you for it. And so I'm fine with that. And I think that's Ryan's mistake, is he attacked a part of the fandom, or they saw it as an attack, even if he was just having fun, right? Your Snoke theory sucks, right? He just he may have been really lighthearted about that. And then comments that they made on set about Mike Zero, for example, felt like attacks. And then they never came back and said, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to come across in an abrasive way. I was just having fun. And you are absolutely right to have your Snoke theories, or, whatever. And I think that was a big mistake. Yeah. And Trinity, I'm the gatekeeper. Get out. Right. So, yeah, there's a lot of that. And I thought, I keep thinking about how to explain this. It's like, I assume you like ice cream, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite flavor of ice cream?
I like cookie dough.
Cookie dough. Cookie dough ice cream is an abomination. You can't like ice cream and like cookie dough, because it's not true ice cream, right? That's the kind of arguments that we have in Star Wars.
Oh my goodness. Hell, it's the kind of arguments we have in everything, man.
Right?
That's what the general vicinity of every argument in society looks like right now. It's like, oh, if you have a different opinion than me, then your opinion isn't true. It doesn't exist.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Exactly. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, Xavier, the multiverse is a cop out. I think as long as they leave it open for interpretation, it's fine. If you want to believe there's a multiverse, that's fine. And even if they build enough of support for it, and I say this as well, like, I'm not going to say that you're. This is a problem with a lot of leaks. When you read a leak about a movie or a show, when you read it on paper, you're not exact. You can say, "Oh, that sounds terrible. Oh my goodness." But when they execute it, right, it comes down to execution. Can you sell the story? Is it something that I can follow? And is it something that I can embrace? As long as they do that, then who am I to say, right? So at this point, I'm not going to say the multiverse is a cop-out. I don't think it exists. But if they build it and they sell it and they make it happen in a convincing and satisfactory way, who am I to say, right? It gets rid of it. I don't agree with you, Xavier. I think that both can be. You can. The thing with the multiverse is they are both canon. There's no non-canon, so you don't have to say.
See, that's kind of was my point. I think that both will wind up being canon if they do the multiverse.
Yeah, the thing that made me most mad about The Last Jedi is 3PO should have been sucked out in space instead of Akbar. That's funny.
That and what? Hey, actually, on that note, Santa, what do you think about Leia? When she got sucked in, so that was honestly kind of the moment in the film that really irked me, and not because of the quote unquote like Leia Poppins moment. Like, I didn't think that was like overly cheesy if she was going to fly back to the ship. My thing is like. When you look at that scene within the context of just like general like filmmaking, you have an actor there that was physically, passed on in real life at the point where that movie was being made. And I guess I don't understand it. I guess my biggest problem with Rian Johnson's decisions in that movie was having her spaced. Essentially, she's standing on the bridge of the ship. Kylo doesn't shoot the stormtroopers and the TIE fighters. They go ahead and take care of it for him. She flies off into space. At that moment, you see her body kind of, gradually and slowly floating off in space, and it shows her kind of freeze over and be encased in ice because, space is so cold. And I feel like as a filmmaker, that would have been the most poetic, beautiful send-off for Carrie Fisher in a way, because she herself, like her body wasn't physically harmed in that explosion. And as that camera panned off of her, you could see her kind of floating off into space, frozen in time, per se, like forever.
I'm a big sequel trilogy defender. There are things about it I absolutely love, but that doesn't mean that I think everything was done perfectly.
Right. No, I was just curious. Like, what? I mean, do you agree with me on that, or do you think that I'm insane to think that they should have let Leia die in The Last Jedi instead of Luke?
I'm okay with them letting her die in Rise. I wish that scene were done differently. My own personal preference, and I think I'm with most people, is Akbar should have survived. I would have preferred that when she sensed that was coming, you see her take that deep breath right as it's getting ready to blow up.
Right.
That she uses the Force to create a field that holds them in.
Right. The shipping gets space.
Right. So that could have happened. They still could have, and then they could have been pulled in, right? Just as they were once she floated back in after the Mary Poppins scene, right? So I would have preferred to have her do something Jedi-like. I love that she did something Jedi-like, right? That they let her show that she had strong Force abilities. I just wish it were executed differently. And even if you're going to keep her getting sucked out, the way they executed the scene being pulled back in, I think it didn't work for even me. I'm like, oh, that looks terrible. But you know, it is what it is, and I can't undo it. I would have preferred Akbar to live, and for the Holdo maneuver to be in the Akbar maneuver. That would have been a better resolution.
So much more sense.
But
right?
Yeah, it would have felt better to me. And also,
I think as a fan in general, probably because Akbar seemed like he could have gotten a send off, like a heroic send off.
Yeah, and there are things about Rise that would have liked to see done differently as well. I'm not a big fan of the Rey Skywalker.
Me either. But I didn't particularly like that or the execution of the throne room scene. I love it. The pacing was obviously frantic throughout the movie, but I didn't necessarily have as big a problem with that as what everyone else seemed to. It seemed kind of like it was like just a fast pace, like going straight to the point type of movie. But when they got to the throne room scene, I guess the one thing that really bothered me about that particular scene and the execution of it was that I felt like, and I've been criticized for saying this, so like I already know what everyone's going to say. But I think that when you have two people standing in front of Palpatine with a lightsaber drawn on him, having him merely hit them in the chest with a bolt of lightning and then essentially take down an entire fleet with lightning and have no fight sequence really at all, I thought that was kind of a cop out. It's like I understand that, like Ian McDiarmid doesn't like to do the lightsaber sequences and fight scenes and stuff, and I get it, but like with all the CGI and stuntmen and stuff that go into these films, like it would have looked like to me we would have gotten Rey and Kylo versus Palpatine in a lightsaber duel, not Rey reflecting lightning back at him the same way that Mace Windu did. I just thought that was it's like Palpatine. Like, wouldn't you know to stop doing that when you see her block your lightning? Like,
well, I mean, it happens in all three trilogies.
right. That's what I was saying.
He shocks the crap out of himself with Mace Windu, right? He shocks the crap out of himself. And then at the end of Return of the Jedi, he shocks the crap out of himself again. You would have think even the second time, you're like, well, dude, that hurt the first time.
Right. And I feel like that's like one of those like kind of like bonehead callbacks. It's like they did it to try to make the fans happy and be like, oh, look, like she's doing it the same way. But it's like, man, come on. Like,
for me, it's Star Wars, right? It's the silliness that is Star Wars. There are things that just don't make sense. And I'm just like, that's hilarious. And so I just take it differently, right? And that's fine. And that's why I say I'm okay with this alternate timeline theory, just as I am with the Darth Jar Jar. I don't get angry at people for having a Darth Jar Jar theory and think your Darth Jar Jar theory sucks, right? And that's what I thought Rian Johnson did wrong. Mostly. And I like the movie. And I thought that it would have, in Rise, would have paid off better if Rey were a strand cast and that mirror scene in The Last Jedi is paid off. I felt like the mirror scene isn't paid off in Rise. So
yeah, like how cool would it have been if she walked into that throne room and standing next to her was
Dark Rey. Yeah, exactly.
Or standing next to Palpatine.
There's where I wanted to go. Right. So,
wouldn't that have been insane? Like to get a Rey versus Dark Rey fight at the end, like any kind of lightsaber fight. I feel like it was necessary, and that's the one thing they truly missed objectively in the movie.
We didn't have to have a Palpatine, Rey, and Ben lightsaber duel. We could have had a Dark Rey with the dual sabers.
Right, a real one that lasted 10 minutes or so.
Exactly. And had she been a strand cast, and that you had this very rare occurrence, in that there's some issue with the Dark Rey that Palpatine couldn't keep her as his successor, or maybe she is the successor. It doesn't matter. It would have been fine if Dark Rey was the successor, and they figured out, well, we got to kill her because this guy. We can't allow this to happen. And they could have really had a huge battle there with an actual Dark Rey. That would have been a huge payoff for me personally. And so that's why I say I'm a sequel trilogy supporter. I defend it. I enjoy them. That doesn't mean I couldn't find things that I would have liked better. I'm the same way with the original trilogy. I don't think Leia should have ever been Luke's sister. It would have been better for me had they left his sister as, oh shoot, what's her name? Somebody will remember here. Starts with an, I just went blank on her name. There's a in the original script, Luke's sister was somebody else entirely. And that would have still worked. Nothing in the original trilogy changes by not having Leia be his sister.
Right. Because Leia's not trained. Leia doesn't really participate in the battles, per se. Like,
they could still be the big three. That she still is the Princess of Alderaan. She's still a hero. She's all of that, and you could have carried on into the sequels with her as a general or whatever. That all still works. She could have even been Force sensitive. That's fine, but she didn't have to be Luke's sister for me. But that's fine. But so that's as far as just being a fan. I think those are things that make Star Wars fun for fans. Is to come up with your own theories, be it Darth Jar Jar, Luke is dead, Leia shouldn't have been his sister, or this dual timelines, or I would have preferred to have a Dark Ray in person, like a real Dark Ray. All of that would have been great, but I still love Star Wars, right?
You do.
We need more Babu Frick. Yes, I think everybody on all sides of the fandom agree more Babu Frick. Ryan Johnson made Force Ghosts intervene in the physical universe, undermines the entire story of struggle in mortal world. Well, Mark, I got to disagree with you a little bit because we have the Force Ghosts intervening in physical all the way back into the prequel era. There's scene in the in the Clone Wars, the animated series, where Yoda's having a discussion with Qui-Gon Jinn, and he's like, "Are you really real? Like, am I having a hallucination? Maybe somebody's invading my mind and telling me things that aren't happening." And then Yoda picks him up. I mean, Qui-Gon picks Yoda up and levitates him, and then puts him back down. So that was the spiritual back to there, even in the original trilogy or in the prequel era. And people have done a close view when Obi-Wan on Dagobah comes around the corner, he touches a limb, pushes it out of the way, and goes around and sits down on the log. Now, the log could have just been physical or not physical. He's just pretending to sit on it, but he's in that state. But pushing that limb, you had the Force Ghost interact with the physical. So it's been all the way through, and Ryan didn't do that. Ryan didn't set the precedent.
So which way do you like it better?
Meaning what?
Do you like the Force Ghost like being clearly and obviously not capable of interacting with the physical realm, or do you like it kind of how Ryan did it and made it so that there was more? Because I mean, I guess JJ kind of followed suit, like with Rise of Skywalker. When you really look at it, moving after The Last Jedi, Luke grabs the lightsaber handle full blown in Rise of Skywalker. So
Force Ghosts are a problem from the get-go. Like, why aren't they telling more information from what they know? Even in the original trilogy, Yoda or Obi-Wan could have been sharing with Luke more information than he did.
Right.
And giving the rebels coordinates and information, and he could have been visiting Anakin. Obi-Wan and Anakin had a strong bond. Everybody says, well, he couldn't because it was only through a strong bond with somebody, and he had that with Luke. I'm like, well, he knew Luke for about, a week. And now he's Force Ghost visiting. Well, you both have to be light side. Oh, okay. So they started inventing rules, right? To explain why Force Ghosts aren't interacting like Obi-Wan. And I think the Obi-Wan series is going to show that he does have connections to Anakin. I think we're going to see that in the Obi-Wan series, which is going to, again, introduce more issues as far as Force Ghosts as a concept. Because why aren't they giving away information? Obi-Wan could have been visiting Anakin and haunting him, like making him crazy. He also could have been taking information from Anakin, from Darth Vader, and feeding it back to the rebels. But it's all mess. It's all mess. So it's another point where you have to say, well, okay, Star Wars is different, right? It's just
true. It is different.
And you can't. I've brought this up before. Star Wars isn't as much sci-fi as it is space fantasy.
Yeah, that's kind of meaning earlier.
Yeah, that's where people were pointing out how space is actually not cold. It does this. Blah, 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 blah. Well, in Star Wars, it's cold. Right. So it is. Doesn't matter what actual science tells you because it's not sci-fi. I like the story as it was told. So you asked me a question just to answer you. I'm fine with Force Ghosts having interaction with physical, and the through line that goes all the way from the prequel era through still works for me.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I was thinking about it too. Because I mean, really, I never, I guess, saw the issue with people. At least what with the issues they had with the Force Ghosts, the way Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams took them in the sequel trilogy, because I just kind of felt like, I mean, who's to say that the other Force Ghosts couldn't have interacted with the physical realm too? They just didn't try. Like, we didn't see any need for that to happen. We didn't see any reason why a Force Ghost would ever attempt to interact with the physical realm other than when Luke asks Obi-Wan to help him with Vader and Obi-Wan says no.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Real quick, I'm gonna show you all. Russell, thanks for being here. Wu-Tang Wells. I love to give Russell a hard time putting him on the naughty list because he likes to argue with me. And so anytime anybody argues with me, you're apt to get put on the naughty list just for fun. But Russell enjoys it. He enjoys the banter. He enjoys getting put on the naughty list and then complaining about it. Like he practically begs me to put him on the naughty list, and then he complains when I put him there. But I have to give you guys, tell you that this intro, if you've missed the intro, I'm going to play it right now. Just the title bit. So it's about 7 seconds long, something like that. Russell did this for me, and I'm forever grateful. So let me just play this the short one.
Like that.
That is freaking amazing.
It is. It is.
I love it. So Russell, thanks for being here. Thanks for all that you've done for me. Over time, when we have new movies, people look on the sequel trilogy differently. Yeah, I think so too. And we'll definitely have a new generation come up to have a different appreciation.
You still have that second graphic that I sent you?
I probably do. Hold on just a second. Let me go up and go here. Pull it up. Oh, your second
one. Yeah. So that's the one that I'm trying to get animated. I'm looking for someone to do that for me, but I'm not too versed in the video.
I'm not either. Russell is the guy. He's the man. He made that happen for me. So yeah. I didn't even share that. Hold on a second. I wasn't sharing it. I put it up and acted like I shared it, but I didn't share it. Here you go.
So yeah, I'm looking to kind of take that and have the Nerdvana thing, pop out of hyperspace, like arrive, at the beginning of the video. So
there you go. You got to talk to Wu-Tang Wells.
Wu-Tang Wells.
He's the man. Let's see. Yeah. Why do most big franchises have twincest? Twincest is a thing. It actually happens in real life. There have been cases where twins separated at birth and then given up for adoption or adopted by different families, but they live in the same geographical area, and they may meet in high school or college, and they start dating. And then they find out, oh, holy moly, that's my sister. It's happened several times. There are actual incidents of it, and there's a natural attraction between twins to one another. And when you have the male-female version, it's happened a few times. It's problematic. It's problematic. But the biggest problem with the original trilogies is that at the end, Luke says, "You're my sister," and she goes, "I've always known." Really?
Did you?
when, when, when you had the full lip lock on him,
right?
Like you knew, really?
That's pretty gross, Leia.
Yeah, like you went for it.
Didn't realize that Star Wars was also a story of incest.
Oh man, yeah, it was really bad, and that's why I said it would have worked better for me if they didn't make it. And I get that they were trying to do the "I'm your father" effect in the
you get the full surprise out of it.
Yeah, that surprise, but they didn't think it through.
Didn't Lucas said it at one point because he originally wrote Star Wars as a standalone.
Yes.
So it's like he probably didn't think about it.
No, he didn't, and he didn't really care that much at the time.
Right. I don't think he realized until about the time that he started planning episode 1 what he actually had on his hands. I don't like.
And then he created problems in that. So that's I'm thankful that you've been here with me today, and I want to point people back to your channel. I know that you're just getting into doing live streams. This is your very first.
This is my very first one, yeah. So like my YouTube channel currently has 0 content. I actually have been working on getting all the banners and all that kind of stuff set up. So I really have been, slammed with work and doing the COVID thing, helping, take care of my parents and that kind of stuff. So I just haven't had a whole lot of time to get started. I've been working on getting an actual camera right now. This is a little built-in webcam on my laptop. I have a DSLR and stuff, but software issues are happening, and I'm kind of tired of messing with it. So I've just been waiting until I can get back out of the house again so that I can go get the last couple pieces of equipment I need, and then I'll be streaming regularly, 3 or 4 times a week. So
very good. I want to thank you for having a discussion with me today, and I want to get.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I want to get people who have different opinions and show people what it looks like when people with different opinions can have discussions and not be at each other's throats. And what comes across a lot of times in Discord or in YouTube streams or whatever are that it seems like comments are more adversarial. And like we mentioned before, that's the way it is mostly in our society.
Well, I think it's probably built off the idea, like when you watch, even like looking at Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that, it's like you have all these people set up on instant notifications so that like the moment some specific person tweets or whatever, like this person knows and they can immediately just get there and respond. And, it's almost like there's this drive to be instantaneously confrontational with anything and everything you see because that's what gets clicks.
Yeah. Well, and here in the States, everybody in the world knows right now what a hot mess our our political situation is a hot mess. And for people that have known me my entire life, I've been very active politically. I was, especially in college, I was really politically active and just following. And I was being recruited by the party to run for office or to take an office or to get more involved politically. And I backed away because I saw what it was like from the inside and said, "Ooh, this is not the kind of person that I am." And it's only gotten worse. And so, I'll admit, I'm conservative. I've been registered with the Republican Party since I was a teenager. And I
actually recently deregistered, but I am a conservative. Yes.
Yeah. So I lean more libertarian these days as I get older, but I've had to back away. I just can't take it. Right. And the way that people feud over political positions is just not healthy. in our country, and it is getting worse. And what I want to show here is within the fandom, within Star Wars, we can have differences of opinion. And Magic Maker and I are opposed on a lot of ideas. Wandering Dog and I have had these conversations within Discord and in YouTube where we disagree with one another. But you can see this is healthy. Right? We're still friends.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of the thing that I've been trying to get across to people for a long time now. Like, we're headed down a really, really slippery slope, man. With all these people, like you were talking about with the political spectrum, the way it is currently, and that seeming to be bleeding into every other aspect of what we do, whether that be movies or video games or news or television or whatever. I think that society has gotten to a point where we're extremely polarized.
Oh yeah.
And I think that being able to sit down and have a conversation, whether it be on YouTube or, in person or on the phone or whatever, something outside of text message, like you said, because the texting has gotten to the point where everything is so, like instantaneously passive aggressive and, all these, it's like social media and texting and all that has become so nuanced, really, and it's like, that's kind of a weird thing, because really everyone should be kind of able to like express themselves without having to worry about other people, coming down on them for their beliefs. So like, as long as you have some moral code and that moral code, aligns you with what's like objectively good to other people, as long as you're not hurting people and doing things that mess up other people's abilities to succeed and be happy, like kind of, going about your business and stop arguing with people all the time. It's like,
you're
really good problem in this particular fan base, it's like we've been arguing for almost 10 years now.
Oh yeah. And you raise a really good point about how it's starting to bleed over. People, there are groups within the fandom, and I think everybody's familiar with who they are, who bring the politics and the social arguments into the fandom. And they use the content of the franchise, and it doesn't matter. It's in Star Wars, but it's also in Harry Potter, and it's also in Star Trek, and it's also in Lord of the Rings. It's everywhere. Whatever the fandom is, there are people who are bringing the stuff in, and they're fracturing the franchise. And Trinity likes to say, look, our disagreements are supposed to make us better, right? They're supposed to bring us together. And that's what my goal here is to have these discussions and talk about, maybe I didn't think of it that way. And I can see that these two guys or these two folks, right? We'll have some, I'm working with perhaps two other ladies to have as guests here as well to talk about Star Wars, but get different opinions. And that's good for us. And it should make us better, right? And Dale,
we should do something similar to what they were doing on you saw the Star Wars Theory and all that, like the big live stream where they had a bunch of different guests hopping in and out, and
yep,
I think that'd be fun. Like get some, like we have a bunch of people in here between your server, my server, and XR Coons. It seems like there's a pretty general little core right here that would have a cool 5 or 6 person conversation to do.
I think so too, and that's where we're headed. And I have to really give credit to my friend, reimagining Star Wars, Imagic Maker. He and I started this over a year ago, and we met on Thor Skywalker's server, and we disagreed a lot, a lot, and but it was constructive. And when I left Thor's server for a while, financially, I just wasn't able to support him. So I left his server for a while. Imagic Maker and I continued our relationship forward. And now we have a collaboration on our channels. And every Thursday, we're coming in to have these discussions. Tomorrow, I believe Imagic Maker and I are going to jump into the Mortis arc and talk about Mortis. Go deep dive. And he and I have different thoughts about things there. And that should be fun. So look forward to that. Mr. Nobody, Pablo brought all the YouTubers together. Well, again, Pablo and Ryan Johnson both kind of picked a fight they shouldn't have picked. All right, shouldn't have picked it. So I want to close with another thing, just for those that weren't here at the beginning. And again, huge thanks, Wandering Dog. I truly, truly appreciate you. And we need to do this more. We need to get
definitely. I would love to do it again, man. I've had a good time.
We want to get Trev, you, Imagic Maker, and others. We'll get together and we'll have a collaboration. Fandom.
We've got to get Josh in here. We'll send a couple super chats and harass him into coming on too.
I've been begging
Give him
Josh,
a piece of our mind, bro.
like, please, Josh, please come on. But he is so busy. Fandom Nerd, love to collaborate. I would love to do that with you. Reach out to me. Let me know. I'll put my email in here. Anybody who wants to Santa Claus gmail.com. So there's my email address. So you shoot me an email, we'll work something out. I'm also on Twitter. You can find me there and you can direct message me there. Or I'm on a lot of these Discord servers. I'm in the Den of Nerds. I'm on Nerdvana. I'm on some others as well. You can find me. I'm in the Imagic Makers. I'm Thor Skywalkers.
Me too. I'm in Den of Nerds, Thor Skywalker. I'm in Star Wars Fandomverse, which is reimagining Star Wars, or that's his Discord. Fanjecture. So I mean, if anyone's interested in
we're all in
getting
this together, and absolutely, I would love at some point when it makes sense to have a panel discussion on a topic, and we will get there. So tomorrow I'm reimagining Star Wars, but Friday I've got a toy unboxing. Again, no spoilers. If you know what it is, I'm gonna give you a hint of what is in this box. I got this box yesterday, and I peeked in, and I was like, oh boy, this is fantastic. There are two clues I'll give you. Again, no spoilers in the chat. If you know what it is, you can just say, I know. If you don't, then join us Friday. There are some accessories in here. One is an ice cream maker. The other is the first vintage collection figure that has exchangeable heads, so you can put two different looks on the figure, depending on what situation you might be in. So there you go. Xavier says, I know. Oh, I'm super excited about it. I know somebody else who knows. Mark Hamilton, for sure, already knows, but just from those clues. But if you haven't seen those, I am really, really excited to share it with you.
I know too. There's a few of those.
That's great. And it's from The Mandalorian. So there you go. A Magic Maker, I still don't know. I'll contact you separately, because I know you have talked about perhaps getting the toy so that Vega and I can review it together. So maybe we'll do that. So we'll do it afterwards. So you guys, thanks so much. Well, I think we'll call it from here. I do want to just do a brief remake on summary of the discussion where we started. There's a theory that says when Ezra pulled Ahsoka out, that it created two timelines. And I put a link in the description here to what is it? It's Lore Star. He has a video that describes it really well. And we discussed all the way through, and I think go ahead.
Santa, you got like five. There was one thing that I told somebody we would touch on yesterday that I think I honestly really completely forgot.
Go ahead.
So I guess one of the things that kind of made this whole theory kind of like connect for me was I started to touch on it, I guess, back at the beginning, but when you're in season 2, episode 5 of Mandalorian, if you pay attention to the owl, everyone talks about, seeing Mariah in that episode in the tree ranch. As the episode moves on from the moment you see the owl, the camera continuously pans around Amando's front side. And if you look over his left shoulder, on the scene, you can actually see the owl continuing to be there over his left shoulder as a white blur over this like really, gray, dark background. So it's like obvious that you can still sit there and see its belly. As the scene goes on, Mando actually pulls the scope out and shows how all of his instruments and everything are functioning properly, and he can, basically see anything and everything that's within a mile radius of him, and the camera is showing everything behind him. So you can see that there's nothing in the set with him other than Baby Yoda, Grogu, and the owl. But as Ahsoka attacks him, if you pause at that exact moment, when you see him start to turn around, he actually spins a full 180 and looks directly up in the air when Ahsoka attacks. So I actually have a theory that I think Ahsoka is very literally the owl. So looking back at Clone Wars during the Mortis arc, you were talking about it yesterday on your stream, and it just, kind of led into this for me. I think that when Ahsoka died on, the Mortis arc, and the daughter gave her last bit of life essence, at Anakin's request, I think that life essence actually turned Ahsoka into the daughter, because there has to be a daughter. Like the father talks about Anakin becoming the son, or becoming the father even. And the way they kind of phrase it is, it almost seems like it's a requirement, like if one of those beings dies, like someone has to be there to take its place. And so I think when the daughter died and Ahsoka gained life through the last bit of her essence, I think she actually became the daughter. So look, the Ahsoka dies theory, the reason I think that would line up with the sequel trilogy is because Ahsoka dying, if she is the daughter, then she represents the physical embodiment of the light side of the Force. So her dying at the hands of Vader would actually send the galaxy into darkness, because the light would take such a massive blow from its physical embodiment dying, and there not being an immediate replacement. And maybe that's where, the light side ends up making Rey so powerful, because the daughter died.
Yeah, I see where it's almost like a Bruce Banner and Hulk situation, right? Where the two entities exist within the one physical embodiment, right? But
Kind of, yeah. So what I think that, so how like the daughter, she actually transforms into that owl during the Mortis arc of Clone Wars. Like she can actually physically transfigure herself.
The only issue with that is that you see the Morai and Ahsoka together a lot of times. Not.
You're right. In Clone Wars, you do.
Yeah, and even in the World Between Worlds, where the Morai's there, and she comes out, they're both there.
Right. So you think that it could be both, either or, and one and the same?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, and I read your paragraph on it, and it's really well thought out, and I like it. I don't subscribe to it, but I also like it a lot,
right?
Because what you're talking about in that episode, The Jedi, from season 2 of The Mandalorian. You do see the Morai there on that limb, and no Ahsoka. And as you're saying, the camera does pan around, and all of a sudden, the Morai's not there, but Ahsoka is.
Right. And I just think because they talk about in gallery, if you watch the gallery, they talk about how during Filoni's episode is where the filmmaking itself gets really, really nuanced. And they talk about how they have the attention to these specific angles and these specific things on the lightsaber hilts and all these things. And I find it almost hard to believe that they could have that level of attention to detail and these camera angles showing the owl in the peripherals, but not Ahsoka and no other living being for that matter being up in the treetops where the owl would be, and where it seems that Ahsoka actually attacks Mando from. That's the one that really kicked it for me, because there's a shot and it's really, really short. You know, it's like a split second shot where Mando turns around to block the lightsabers that he hears ignite, and he's looking, I mean, literally directly up in the sky. And it's like the only way she could have attacked from that position is if she was in the tree branch, or if she like force jumped, 20 feet up in the air, and that would just seem pointless given that she was already behind him.
Yeah. And Will Morgan had a really, and I saw Phantom Nerd mention something about with the world between worlds and Ahsoka being pulled in timeline runs into another. Will Morgan had an interesting theory about the world between worlds yesterday that he shared, and kind of blew Trev and I kind of blew our minds. Really, really strong. So if you missed that, then catch that in yesterday's stream. It's a long stream. It's about 2 hours. But there's a really good point in there that Will talks, and it's just past halfway. So if you start at 1 hour and play it fast, you'll get to Will's point that perhaps whenever anybody's communicating, that they're doing it through the world between worlds. If you're using the Force and you're communicating with somebody else, whether it's a Force ghost or a voice, you're alive, that you're doing it through the world between worlds. And when we hear Ahsoka in Rise of Skywalker, that she stepped into the world between worlds alive to talk to Rey, and she's using that the world between worlds isn't necessarily used as time travel. It's also a way just to communicate and to learn and to use as a library. If you wanted to see what happened at a particular point in time and you want to research it and understand, you could go into the world between worlds and view it and learn and look for aspects that maybe weren't recorded.
Yeah. So, and that's actually something you just said that made me think of Palpatine actually went into the world between worlds too.
Well, he didn't go in.
Well, he kind of. I guess it's just his hand, but
yeah, he wanted to get in, but he couldn't go through his portal. Right, he had a window that he could create using the dark, the dark energy, but he wasn't able to use it as a portal. He wanted Ezra to open it so he could go in, and he really wanted to get Ezra to flip so that he could do that, but then it didn't happen. So there is something preventing Palps. As you mentioned, his hand does go in, and he shoots that fire through there, but he can't enter the world between worlds, and we don't know exactly why, but yeah. I think forced meditation also takes you into the world between worlds to look at the symbols. That's what Will is saying, essentially, that anytime you're accessing the spirit side of the Force, that from the physical to the spirit accesses the world between worlds as the conduit. It's an interesting concept. Again,
really is
fun to think about, and Will kind of has my brain still hurting on that one. So, so look, I think we're going to go ahead and end the stream. That's a fantastic and Wandering Dog. I really like the Ahsoka and the Morai being the same. What happened the last 11 minutes? We talked a little bit about. Wandering Dog sent me a document yesterday talking about how in the Jedi episode of season 2 Mandalorian that you see the Morai there, and as the camera pans around, you don't see Ahsoka, and then you see Ahsoka, but you don't see the Morai, and that supports the Ahsoka is dead theory, and that she is. Is it Ahsoka is dead? Well, that in Mortis she died, and that her and the daughter became one, and that they are exchanging between the Morai and Ahsoka the embodiment of her. And that in that episode, it's done really masterfully. Dave Filoni does a really, really masterful job of suppressing the two of them being seen together, and having Ahsoka appear where the Morai was, and the Morai not being there. It was really, really masterful. So we talked about that, and how the world between worlds. That's Will's theory on is present at the Rise. He says for sure. Well, for sure for Will. And then to get back to the summary of what we were talking about. we were talking about how the two timelines can exist. Both would be canon. So it's not that if this exists, the sequels are decanonized or they're retconned. It's that they exist in canon, and that in the other timeline, they don't exist in canon. But both timelines are canon. And I think that's what you were saying, right?
Yeah, like an either or situation. That way, I think that's just to me, looking at it from like the rhetoric that Disney and Lucasfilms tend to use these days. It seems like, like when they're talking about, the Mandalorian stuff and some of the stuff that appeals to more like the hardcore fan base, like it seems like they're like, oh, like we might look at retconning, like, this kind of like the rhetoric goes there. And then like when you see something else, like maybe with the High Republic, where they're just exploring a completely different time frame, it's like blatantly obvious that they wouldn't want to do that. So it's like, how can they make both fans happy? Is it two timelines and both are canon?
Right. And it doesn't have to be that one's not canon. Both can be canon. And I'm okay with that, even though I love the sequels and I don't want to see them. I don't want to see the fandom divided in a concrete way, where you say, if you're a fan, then you believe this timeline, where you have this gatekeeping going on, right? Like true fans believe that this is real canon. Casual fans, normies, and quasi fans believe that this timeline is, right? And you discredit one or the other. And typically it would be like, well, hardcore fans think that the sequel trilogies didn't exist. The true canon timeline is this one. But that's not healthy for the fandom to have that cemented. But if you say that both are equal canon, that none has precedence over the other, then you can say, well, I like this canon. I like this
storyline
better than this timeline. But that doesn't mean that one doesn't exist. And a Magic Maker brings up a good point. Gandalf died. Well, it seemingly died anyway, right? When the Balrog pulled him down, and then he came back as Gandalf the White. And we do see that Ahsoka is Ahsoka the Gray when we see her in The Mandalorian. But at the end of the Rebels epilogue, she's Ahsoka the White. That's true. So she could have died and returned, and it had these two different identities possible. Maybe we get Jason and Jaina in an Ahsoka timeline. Right. They could do all that kind of stuff. In the Filoni verse, and that's what they talk about. The Filoni verse will be one timeline. The sequels are the other timeline. So, if you prefer one, you could just say, I like this storyline better, but you can't say that the other storyline isn't canon. I don't think it would be healthy to decanonize one. So there you go. A Magic Maker. Now he died. Gandalf said he did, but then yeah.
See, that's what we're doing too. I mean, if you can go, Gandalf died or didn't die, and he both died and didn't die. Like, well, I can't.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to dual canon timelines as long as one doesn't decanonize the other. You can say, well, yeah, they're both equal canon, but it does raise that they have some work to do to explain it to normies that we have a multiverse in Star Wars. And I'm not really in favor of a multiverse in Star Wars, right? But my own personal opinion, I wouldn't like to see it. Much like I would rather have had a real Dark Rey in the battle at the end. That was my own personal preference. It didn't
matter. Dark Luke. That would have been insane, right?
Yeah, I mean that would have been great, but that's my own personal preference. But so my own personal preference is that there's not a multiverse, but if the execution is done, the storytelling is done well, and it is there's some connective tissue to explain it. Okay, all right. Like I'm not a huge fan of Endgame. I thought all the time jumping going on there, and the multiverse is a huge hot mess. But it's largely beloved. So,
But I mean, that's what I was gonna say. That's a mainstream movie. You know, that people were saying how like normies wouldn't understand Star Wars having two timelines. It's like, hell, dude, Endgame had 7 timelines in one film.
yeah, and,
You know, it's like, people are not as stupid as you want to pretend like they are. Like, I mean, they'll be able to understand if you kind of give them a little bit of direction.
yeah, yeah. So that's our summary. Are there 2 timelines in Star Wars? Yes and no. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know. There's nothing to disprove either theory. You know, at this point, it's your own thought, right? Endgame wasn't time travel; it's timeline travel, right? Right. So you're jumping timelines, and essentially that's what would be happening. And if you wanted to look at the world between worlds, each portal is its own timeline, not an actual point in time, but it's different timelines that are running. Well, okay. You know, hey, that's fine. Will, what I'm saying, Rey's battle with Palpatine has a door, just like Ahsoka and Vader's battle has a door. Yeah, that's what I was just saying, right? I'm saying all voices from the end of Rise are coming from the other side of her door, the world between worlds. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like each one of those doors represents a different timeline or a different, not necessarily a point in time. It's not time travel. It's different timelines that have to be brought together. I mean, that could happen. Yeah. That's why there's no Force ghosts. They aren't ghosts. They're actually all Jedi from different time periods, all talking between the world between worlds. Right. They're all alive at the time. That's what Will's saying. Right.
I think that's possible. That's definitely what he's saying. I find it hard to necessarily get on with that just because it seems like, well, I mean, obviously, like we watched Luke die, like we watched Yoda die. You know, like so it's like, I mean, yeah, maybe they are all Jedi from different time periods for sure. Like they're definitely still dead though.
Can you shoot me in Discord the link to your Discord that I can put in the chat here?
Oh yeah, definitely. Give me like
two. Come up for me to approve. So if you put it in Discord, I'll put it here. And I just want to point people again in the description. I put a link to Nerdvana's YouTube channel. He's only got like 6 subscribers there. There's no content there yet, but it's coming. And if you go ahead and subscribe, you'll be on the front edge of that as it happens. So
yes, with the content on Nerdvana, I was kind of really trying to, get a little network going on Discord before I start dropping content because I, like to make things that people actually see instead of just, dropping it on the corner of the internet and hoping that somebody sees it at some point. So I figured, all the people that I talk to and the Discords from the other channels and, stuff like that, friends from real life, might try to get them in here first. And then once I get the little community interacting and talking to each other, then start making some videos and doing some live streams and we can all hang out.
Yeah, very good. And as soon as I get that, I'll put it in the chat. Trying
to figure out. So Santa, I have a link here, but I've just, oh, okay. Here's where I can make it expire never. Cool.
Can you fix? Oh, that's another good one. So XR Coon brought up, can you fix the YouTube sub server on Discord? Yes, it's driving me crazy, dog. It's
what is it?
On the YouTube channel, I keep getting notices that there's new content, but when I go there, it says you do not have permission to view. So if you could fix that, that would be awesome, and it would.
So it says here, it says permissions not synced for some reason. That's really weird.
Yeah. So that make us all happy. So anyway. Let's get your link in here, and I think Imagic Maker and I have talked how we have started what you see on Monday nights with Josh and Theory. Magic Maker and I have been doing for a year, so we think we are the predecessors to that. We are the precursors, and we set the bar, and they're still trying to catch up to us. So there,
right?
I mean, he's got like 3 million subs, and we've got like 300. So I think combined. So no, Magic Maker has more than 300 alone. I've got less than 200 myself. But yeah, Will says, Ray says that I am all the Jedi. And so he's saying that they're all alive at the time when they're talking to her from their own timelines, and they're going in the year in the world between worlds. Yeah, we've been at it for over a year. Yeah,
Right.
Almost 2. Oh my goodness, time flies when you get old.
Let me know if that didn't fix it. I just tried to do what you were talking about.
Okay.
Here.
And oh, there we go. Now I can. Hey, there we go. We have it. It's
awesome.
working.
So, yeah, I shared your video in here. If that's cool with you, obviously it's the only content I have. So figured out.
Magic Maker, I want to see your in-game hate in Discord. I have a lot of in-game hate as well, but I try not to go there too much. World Between Worlds would be a good explanation for Rey and Kylo's ability to move things through space. Right. They're actually moving between the World Between Worlds physically, in and out portals. Yeah. Will, it's a theory, right? I mean, it's like all these others. You can't disprove it. And it's fun. It's a really mind-bending, fun one. If the Jedi are protecting themselves from the world of the Force through the world between worlds, and that explains why their bodies disappear after death. Maybe. Could Rey have a yellow saber because she did die? Saw the other side, knows the future, connected differently to the Force now. I don't know. I mean, the yellow typically stands for the temple guards, and she is now a guardian of the Jedi texts, right? So you could look at her as the guardian of the that's there now. You put your hate in to let the hate flow. XR Coon, you can't tempt me. Wu-Tang Wells constantly tries to get me to go dark side Santa. I won't do it. I won't do it. I'll tell you. I don't have a link yet. So I don't have a way to share your server, your Discord server.
Did you see it?
No, I don't see it. Can you put it in our?
Let me go one more time. I'm just going to send it to you in a direct message on Discord. Apparently it didn't work the other way.
Yeah, I don't see it. There we go. Fantastic. So, and I'll put this in the description as well. You guys, if you're not a part of Nerdvana Discord server, there's the link. I'll put it in the description here as well. I've been kind of holding off ending the stream because I wanted to get that in, and you guys.
Should be a shareable link too, guys. If y'all have friends or family or whatever that are into the nerdy stuff and they want to come through, we have a channel for just about everybody on this Discord. So
it's a really good one. It's a really good. So you guys, thanks again for being here. Look, tomorrow, Imagic Maker and I will be doing a deep dive into why did I just lose the blank? The Father, the Son, and the Daughter. And is the Son the dark side? Is the daughter the light side? Are they physical embodiments of that? He has opinions, and he will give them. So be ready for that. And you guys, thanks so much for being here. I'm going to go ahead and end the stream now, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Wandering Dog, again, one more time. Thank you so much. You guys go.
Thank you so much for having me on, man. I really appreciate you.
We will do this more and more frequently. So
yeah, maybe something next week or something.
That'd be great. Do regular things whenever topics come up. We'll get folks together, and I love the idea of having a bit of a group of folks, and we might get 4 or 5 of us together to debate and discuss different aspects of whatever it might be. Get you and Trev and Trinity or Adam, Magic Maker, all of us together and talk about a topic from different perspectives, that'd be great. And we might even let Russell and XR in, but they've got to behave themselves. And Will, I've got to get you on. I've got to get you on to talk about your World Between Worlds theory. I think it would be good to have that discussion carried out even further. So you guys take care. So good to have you here. And until tomorrow, Merry Christmas, everybody. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.